Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 6 Part 38 based on novel. So let's start. The 100 Empire Mountain was extremely tall and steep. The mountain was as sharp as a sword, piercing right through the clouds. There were no paths or roads on the mountain, and the only way to ascend the mountain was to fly up. At this moment, there were all kinds of whizzing sound around the mountain peak. Numerous figures flew up the mountain from all directions like a locust swarm. All of their faces contained a fervent look. 1 year of hard and bitter training had finally bore fruit. The geniuses from various empires could not contain the excitement and zeal in their hearts. The mountain peak was precipitous. However, most of the practitioners who could make it here had passed through at least 3 nirvana tribulations. Hence, flying up to the mountain peak was not a difficult task. After a few minutes, under the countless covetous gazes from those practitioners that were under the mountain, some elite practitioners finally made it to the summit with eagerness in their hearts. Dazzling sunlight blossomed onto the mountain peak, bringing surging hope into people like the coming of dawn. Swoosh! Lin Dong and his counterparts were not among the first few to reach the summit. After being blocked by several figures, they finally reached their destination. The moment they landed, they took a sweeping glance at the mountain peak. The mountain peak was an enormous, leveled and smooth limestone arena. As the sunlight shone onto the arena, numerous light beams were being reflected off the floor. It was as if the entire place had become fuzzy and blurry, giving one the feeling of being in a field of mist. Lin Dong's gaze swept across the mountain peak. Suddenly, he raised his head and his eye pupils dilated. Whoosh! An uproar spread across the entire mountain peak like a surging tide. At this moment, everyone raised their heads and looked at the midair with utmost reverence. In the midair, light beams intertwined and formed a glowing table and several glowing chairs. Several sat down on those glowing chairs at will. These figures then looked down indifferently at the mountain peak. Indistinctly, an indescribable intimidating aura engulfed the entire place. The super sects. Looking at the godlike figures who were towering over everyone on the mountain peak, most geniuses that came from various empires could not help but bow humbly. They clearly understood that these Leviathan super sects were the legitimate overlords of the boundless Eastern Xian region. Furthermore, their empires had to align themselves with these super sects in order to survive. The foundation and strength that the super sects possessed were enough to make these people bend their arrogant backbones. Silence swept across the 100 Empire mountain peak. As the 8 figures sat down on the glowing chairs in the midair, the arrogance that these geniuses used to have no longer exist. In the midst of the crowd, Lin Dong was staring closely at the 8 figures while pursing up his lips. He could sense an extremely powerful aura from all 8 figures. No ordinary individuals would have the ability to match that kind of strength. This is the strength of super sects. It's indeed scary. Lin Dong took in a deep breath. His eyes seemed to be filled with fervent and expectation. If he could join such a faction, it should be pretty beneficial to him after all. They are pretty strong. Little Martin, who was standing beside Lin Dong, suddenly chuckled. Lin Dong cast a surprised look at him. This was because he never expected that the haughty little Martin would actually say words. It seems like the strength of a super sect must not be underestimated. Brother Lin Dong, do you see the person on the right? He's from Yuan Gate. Liu Bai, who was standing behind Lin Dong, suddenly blurted out. Oh! Lin Dong's eyes froze slightly. He raised his head unobtrusively and looked at the person sitting on the right. There was a man with grizzled hair sitting on that chair. His face was slightly wrinkled, and yet it still contained a tinge of handsomeness. He must be rather handsome when he was young. His lips, which were as thin as a blade, was the only facial feature that appeared rather sinister. He wore a white robe and there was a picture of a black sun on the robe. Black and white intertwined, and it looked as yin and yang was floating on his robe, matching the word yuan. However, from the beginning, this man had never looked once at the onlookers. He squinted his eyes as if he was taking a nap. That kind of unworldly poise completely suited a member of the Yuan Gate. Lin Dong's gaze stopped at the man for a while. Then, he shifted his gaze to his left. Beside that man, there was an attractive middle-aged woman. She was wearing a pale white cloak, looking extremely graceful and outstanding. She is from the Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace, Liu Bai immediately explained when he saw Lin Dong shift his gaze in that direction. He was rather good at providing information. The one beside her is from the Thousand Puppet sect. This super sect is extremely powerful and they specialize in refining puppets. From the information that I obtained, they possess an immortal puppet, Liu Bai continued softly as he pointed to a grey-robed old man that was surrounded by a ghastly aura. As Lin Dong heard these words, he could not help but shudder. He himself was rather familiar with puppets and therefore, he naturally knew what an immortal puppet was. A puppet of such level possessed legitimate spiritual intelligence. From a different perspective, such puppet was considered a powerful mystical object. He never expected that the Thousand Puppet sect actually had such a legendary item. The other two are Symbol Valley and Divine Sect. Among the 8 super sects, both of these 2 sects major in mental energy and minor in yuan power. Liu Bai pointed at the next 2 figures while providing information on them. Lin Dong could sense a boundless mental energy from these 2 persons. This was the first time Lin Dong saw anyone with such powerful mental energy over the years. Lin Dong furrowed his eyebrows once more. He could somewhat relate to these 2 super sects. However, he did not differentiate his mental energy and yuan power into primary or secondary offensive tools. Even though his yuan power was stronger than his mental energy, Lin Dong knew that this was due to the fact that he purposely suppressed the latter. These 2 sects are rather suitable for you, little Martin chuckled. Lin Dong smiled at these words. However, he had yet to make a decision. The next is the Blade sect. They have a yuan power-imbued swordplay martial art that is extremely powerful. Its offensive power is unparalleled. Oh, that's the Great Desolate Palace. Out of the 8 super sect, their sect members have the most terrifying-looking physical bodies. One of the 2 persons Liu Bai that pointed at was green-cloaked and carried a sword scabbard. The scabbard seemed to emit an extremely formidable sword aura. Meanwhile, the other person had an extremely muscular body. His top half-naked body was bulging with green veins that looked like baby dragons. At times, there seemed to be faint dragon roars coming from those wiggling green veins. Apparently, he had trained his physical body to an extremely powerful state. They truly worthy to be called the super sects. I have gained new knowledge and experience this time around. Lin Dong heaved a sigh as he accepted the fact willingly. The sects that he had come across in the past paled into insignificance in comparison with these super sects. There's still one more sect that I have yet to introduce. This sect is called the Dao sect. This sect is rather unique. They have the least number of members, and yet, they are startlingly powerful. Occasionally, there are some crazy individuals in this sect. 100 years ago, an exceptionally ruthless individual from the Dao sect went bonkers and rushed into the Yuan Gate and killed 3 of their elders, shocking the entire Eastern Xian region. Liu Bai smacked his lips and explained. Even when he spoke of this incident now, he was still extremely horrified by it. The Yuan Gate was the most powerful super sect in the Eastern Xian region. No one had expected that ruthless person would dare to rush into enemy territory single-handedly and even killed 3 of their elders. This incident shocked the entire world. Even Lin Dong gasped at these words. This fellow was indeed ruthless. 100 years ago, it should be that lunatic, little Martin muttered to himself. His facial expression was somewhat complex. What happened to that guy in the end? Lin Dong asked curiously. The incident blew up eventually. One of the 3 heads in the Yuan Gate was alarmed and he had to personally suppress that ruthless person, Liu Bai answered and spread out his hands. To become the leading faction in Eastern Xian region, Yuan Gate's foundation must be extremely terrifying. Even though that ruthless individual was extraordinary, he still paled in comparison with the big shots of the Yuan Gate. Yuan Gate is indeed terrifying. Lin Dong heaved a sigh while he grew increasingly wary of this sect. However, he soon raised his head and shifted his gaze towards the last glowing. He wanted to see how the man from this sect looked like. Just as his gaze shifted in that direction, his facial expression froze. Even little Martin was astonished at what he saw. Sitting on that glowing chair, an old and frail figure leaned lazily against the back of the chair. At this moment, a cryptic smile appeared on the old man's face, capturing the attention of Lindong and little Martin. That face was somewhat familiar. "It's him," Lindong muttered. He and little Martin then gave each other the bewildered look. The old man lazily leaned against the chair of light. His elderly face was not unfamiliar to Lindong. This was the mysterious old man whom Lindong had met in the ancient treasure trove. To think that he is a member of the Tao sect. Lindong and little Martin exchanged gazes with each other, both had strange expressions on their faces. They had guessed the identity of the old man back then. Therefore, they were not overly shocked when they saw this scene. The only thing that surprised them was that this old man was someone from the most unconventional Tao sect. Is brother Lindong acquainted with the Great One from the Tao sect? Beside him, Liu Bai involuntarily asked softly when he saw Lindong staring at the old man with a strange expression. "Yes. I have met him before in the ancient battlefield." Lindong nodded gently as he softly replied. "Eh?" Liu Bai's expression involuntarily changed a little upon hearing this. Immediately, his face filled with envy. From the way he saw it, being able to interact with an individual of a super sect was an extremely fortunate. This old fellow is quite pleasing to the eye. The Tao sect might be a wise choice. Little Martin rubbed his chin and said. Lindong smiled. He also had a rather good impression of this old man. Most importantly, this person did find little Martin's identity taboo. It was likely that the celestial demon Martin tribe did not have any grudges with the Tao sect, hence it would not be a bad decision to join this super sect. The Tao sect is not easy to enter. Although its strength is inferior to the Yuan Gate, its requirements are even more stringent than Yuan Gate. Beside him, Liu Bai interrupted and said. Only after uttering these words did he recall just how abnormally strong Lindong was. He immediately laughed at himself and said, of course, given brother Lindong's talent and performance, you should be able to catch the eye of the Tao sect. Lindong raised his head and stared at the old man. After which, he smiled at the latter. This caused the old man, who had similarly taken notice of them, to smile in return. This brat is rather interesting. The old man's finger gently tapped the back of his chair. His eyes seemed to contain a smile as they paused on Lindong. There was an admiration that an ordinary person could not sense within them. With his ability, he was naturally able to observe the battle between Lindong's group and the Sky Devil Empire at the foot of the 100 Empire Mountain earlier. Lindong's performance had made him quietly nod his head in approval. The old man's heart was quietly shocked by Lindong's progress within a short half a year. Although the latter had obtained the inheritance of the ancient treasure trove, his foundation was still too weak. His low-rank empire status was a huge limitation to himself. However, from the looks of it, Lindong had now clearly leaped across this gap and he was now able to contend against a super empire like the Sky Devil Empire. Lindong's eyes swiftly turned away from the old man. Immediately, he looked at the mountain top. There were currently quite a number of figures standing at the top of the mountain. Moreover, the most spectacular point about this scene was that everyone present had powerful auras. Clearly, they were no ordinary people. Those who could survive the various eliminations and finally arrived at this place could be considered the top individuals amongst the geniuses from the various empires. Whether it was their talent or mental fortitude, those present were the cream of the crop. Lindong's eyes paused on the old man for a moment before withdrawing. After which, he looked towards the field. The numerous powerful auras caused him to involuntarily nod his head. No one here was weak. Qin Qian's group, whom Lindong had met earlier, was the most prominent amongst them. From time to time, practitioners would step forward to greet them politely, and the eyes of these practitioners did not lack a fawning expression. This led one to believe that the Qianyuan Empire was extremely famous. Of course, from the way Lindong saw it, it was mostly because the strongest super sect in the eastern Xian region, the Yuan Gate, was backing the Qianyuan Empire. Lindong glanced at Qin Qian, who was chatting with others while wearing an indifferent smile on his face. It must be said that this fellow possessed an exceptional demeanor. As the leader of the 10 super empires, those that the Qianyuan Empire groomed were indeed extraordinary. Qin Qian appeared to have sensed Lin Dong's eyes. He tilted his head a little and stared at Lin Dong while a faint smile surfaced on his face. Lin Dong nodded his head in a superficial manner towards Qin Qian before withdrawing his eyes. Although Qin Qian had an extraordinary background, he did not approach the latter to get into his good books. There are quite a number of capable individuals here. By his side, little Martin suddenly withdrew his gaze and chuckled. Lin Dong sighed and nodded upon hearing this. After taking a look around, he had discovered more than 10 experts who had advanced into the 5-yuan Nirvana stage. These people were likely also members on the Nirvana Golden ranking and were extremely powerful. However, Lin Dong was not surprised by this. Even though he had defeated the Sky Devil Empire, there were still 9 other super empires. Moreover, the ancient battlefield was extremely vast and there would definitely be others like Suru, who were fortunate enough to ascend the heavens with a single step and thus possess the qualifications to battle with the geniuses of the super sects. Therefore, Lin Dong was not surprised by the number of skilled experts in this place. I wonder what that fellow plans on doing. Lin Dong suddenly recalled the mysterious scheming individuals whom he had encountered in the ancient battlefield as he suddenly frowned a little. He shifted his gaze towards the sky above the 100 Empire Mountain. Although he did not know what those fellows were planning, they would likely choose to act before the 100 Empire War ended. Lin Dong's gaze scanned the area, however, he did not discover anything and immediately shrugged his shoulders. Forget it, it was not his place to worry about such matters. There were experts from the 8 great super sects guarding the space above the 100 Empire Mountain. Even if an accident were to occur, they would deal with it. He, you must be Brother Lin Dong, right? A loud and clear laughter was suddenly from Lin Dong's left while the latter was observing his surroundings. Lin Dong was slightly startled when he heard this laughter. He immediately turned around, only to see a group heading towards him. As his eyes swept across this group, he found 2 familiar faces. They were the 2 super empire generals whom he had met in the ancient Hall City. The Great Gan Empire's Fire General, Qianhua, and Mountain General Nuhuang. Great Gan Empire He. Upon seeing this duo, Lin Dong realized that the group approaching him was also one of the 10 great super empires. Earlier, Lin Dong was merely aware that the Great Gan Empire was a super empire. However, he did not know that they were one of the 10 great super empires. This news was obtained from Liu Bai's group. 3 strongly built figures walked in front of the Zhu Qianhua duo. Powerful ripples continuously spread from their bodies, testament to the fact that they had reached the 5-yuan Nirvana stage. From the looks of it, these were the 3 rumored kings of the Great Gan Empire. Brother Lin Dong, I have long heard of your name. I am Ganjin and these 2 are my companions. The main reason I have approached so boldly is to apologize. Back then, Qianhua's group has given you trouble. Lin Dong, who originally thought that this group was seeking trouble, was slightly startled. He looked towards the slightly red Zhu Qianhua duo before turning back towards the sincere Ganjin. Immediately, he cupped his hands together and laughed softly. What is Big Brother Ganjin saying? Fights are only too common in this place. There is no need to apologize. Lin Dong had a good impression of Ganjin's straightforward manner. Moreover, he did not have a deep grudge with their empire. Therefore, since Ganjin was sincere about burying the hatchet, Lin Dong was naturally willing as well. After all, a friend was better than an enemy. Ganjin's face was full of smiles. His eyes involuntarily weighed Lin Dong. He had naturally heard about the Sky Devil Empire and thus did not dare to belittle Lin Dong. After all, they were weaker than the Sky Devil Empire. Since Lin Dong could finish off the 3 devils of the Song clan, if they were to get into a fight, Lin Dong's group would likely emerge victorious. It was best to avoid provoking such a troublesome opponent. Brother Lin Dong is really outstanding. Though you are from low-rank empire, you are able to enter the Nirvana Golden ranking. This has not happened for many years. Ganjin's words were filled with heartfelt admiration. He knew that Lin Dong must have expended a great deal of effort in order to reach this place. Ha ha, if I am unlucky and end up fighting with you in the subsequent Nirvana Golden Ranking battle, please show some mercy. Ganjin changed the topic and suddenly said. Lin Dong also smiled upon hearing this. He knew that the next event was the main show. The Nivan Golden Ranking battle. It was not only the last battle of the 100 Empire War, but also the most intense one. The final results would determine one's ranking in the ancient battlefield and one's value after entering the super sect. Hence, many people viewed it with great importance. In order to obtain a good ranking, the various geniuses of the various empires would go all out. This battlefield would truly be one where tigers and dragons clashed. A brilliant sun hung high in the sky above the 100 Empire Mountain as warm sunlight sprinkled down. Its radiance was similar to that of dawn. Everyone, it's about time. Seated on the glowing chair in the air, the grizzled hair man from the Yuan Gate announced as his uninterested gaze swept across the surging crowd below before shifting his attention to other super sect members. Upon hearing his words, the other 7 nodded their heads as well. When he saw this, the grizzled hair man slowly stood up with his hands behind his back and cast a sweeping glance across the arena. The commotion on the mountain peak immediately subsided as everyone looked towards him with reverence. Upon receiving this kind of gaze from the crowd, the thin blade-like lips of the grizzled hair man curled up slightly, as if he enjoyed the attention and reverence that he was receiving. I am the Yuan Gate representative, Liu Tong. A flat but firm voice rumbled in everyone's ears like thunder as the grizzled hair man's gaze swept across the mountain peak. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate everyone here. The fact that you are able to reach this place speaks volumes about your strength and potential. Anyone who possesses the heavenly grade Nirvana seal is just barely qualified to become an entry-level disciple of the super sects. Upon hearing these words, several people heaved a sigh of relief as if a huge load had been lifted off their hearts, while emotion filled their eyes. They knew that their 1 year of hard work had finally paid off. As long as they were able to enter the super sects, even if they were entry-level disciples, it was enough to do their empires proud. As for the higher-tier direct disciples, these were reserved for the abnormally powerful individuals that had stepped into the Nirvana Golden Ranking. Many people were somewhat envious when they thought of this. A direct disciple and an entry-level disciple had completely different statuses in a super sect. As for those who have entered the Nirvana Golden Ranking, I would like to congratulate all of you as well. You have obtained the qualifications to become the direct disciples of the super sects, Liu Tong announced indifferently. Next up, there will be a competition of the highest caliber. Only those who have entered the Nirvana Golden Ranking will be qualified to participate in this competition. The final ranking you obtain in the competition will determine the degree of favoritism you receive in your respective super sect. As it stands, the last 3 winners have become a member of our Yuan Gate, and are now famed practitioners across the entire Eastern Xian region. As Liu Tong spoke of this issue, even though his tone was flat like before, it also contained a tinge of pride and arrogance. On the glowing chairs, the other super sect members furrowed their eyebrows slightly. Though the Yuan Gate was indeed powerful, they found Liu Tong's words unpleasant to the ear. The old man from the Dao sect shot a glance at Liu Tong while pursing his lips. Due to some yet-to-be-known reasons, the relationship between the Yuan Gate and the Dao sect was not exactly a friendly one. Therefore, it was natural for the old man to despise the arrogant Liu Tong. Next up, please enter the arena immediately when I call out your names. Liu Tong waved his hand and a glowing scroll opened up in front of him. Qian Yuan Empire, Super Empire, Qin Qian. On the mountain top below, Qin Qian looked at the gazes that were directed at him and could not help but smile slightly. He took a step forward and slowly walked into the arena. His poise indeed contained the demeanor of an elite practitioner. Murmurs and whispers broke out on the mountain peak. Gazes that were filled with fear and envy were directed at Qin Qian. They clearly knew that the Qian Yuan Empire was a subordinate faction of the Yuan Gate. This time around, Qin Qian would most likely become the champion of the 100 Empire War. At that time, he would definitely enter the Yuan Gate. As such, the Yuan Gate would have recruited 400 Empire War champions in a row. Liu Tong looked at Qin Qian and nodded his head approvingly, feeling somewhat pleased in his heart. It appeared that their Yuan Gate would once again be the biggest beneficiary of the 100 Empire War. Great Desolate Empire, Super Empire, Ji Shan. A man, whose muscular body was built like an iron tower and emitted terrifying energy waves, walked out from the crowd and into the arena. Divine Empire, Super Empire, Molang. A black-clothed man swept out from the crowd. Powerful mental energy ripples surrounded his body. It turns out that he was a practitioner that specialized in mental energy. As Liu Tong continued to announce the names, the practitioners of the Nirvana Golden Ranking stepped into the arena one by one. Each time a name was announced, an uproar would break out on the mountain peak and various respectful gazes would be directed at the person who just had his or her name called out. Celestial Empire, Super Empire, Lanying. When Lin Dong heard this name, he raised his head and watched the familiar figure that had just flown into the arena as he softly chuckled. Great Yang Empire, Low Rank Empire, Lin Dong. A slight pause appeared in Liu Tong's voice. Following which, his gaze shifted downward to look upon the slender-body youth. Lin Dong? Is that the Lin Dong who defeated the Sky Devil Empire's Song Zhen? The commotion on the mountain peak suddenly intensified. Numerous gazes filled with intense amazement were directed at the lanky figure. However, at this point in time, no one dared to make any sneering remarks at the mention of a low-rank empire, because the members of a low-rank empire had far surpassed them in terms of strength and capability. Ignoring the numerous gazes of reverence and amazement, Lin Dong moved and landed gracefully on the arena with both his arms slightly hanging down. Great Yang Empire. Lin Jiao. Great Yang Empire. Lin Yang. The following two names further intensified the commotion on the mountain peak, while shock appeared on many people's faces. The fact that the low-rank empire Lin Dong managed to barge into the Golden Nirvana ranking was already startling. No one could imagine the following two names were from the same empire. This definitely riled everyone riled. Ha ha, it has been many years since someone from a low-rank empire barged into the Nirvana Golden ranking. Furthermore, there are three of them. The elderly man that carried a sword sheath caressed his beard and chuckled as he stared at Lin Dong from his glowing chair. Beside him, the old man from the Dao sect laughed as well. He stared at Lin Dong with flickering eyes. Great Qing Empire, Middle Rank Empire, Suru. Upon hearing this, Suru's petite figure flew into the arena and landed beside Lin Dong. She then stuck out her tongue playfully, appearing extremely adorable. However, after a gentle stare from Lin Dong, she quickly closed her tiny mouth. This young lady, the beautiful eyes of the pretty middle-aged woman from the Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace, suddenly brightened up. She stared closely at Suru as if she had discovered something. Her body actually contains a spirit emblem. Such a promising seed, seated beside the beautiful woman, a middle-aged man chuckled. This young lady doesn't specialize in mental energy. Your divine sect has nothing to do with her. Our Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace will be most suitable for her. The beautiful woman rolled her eyes at the middle-aged man and said. Upon hearing these words, the man merely smiled. He did not have any intention of vying with her over Suru. After all, the beautiful woman was right. Suru was not proficient in her mastery of mental energy, and hence, she was not suitable for a mental energy-focused sect like the divine sect. As Liu Tong continued announcing names, more and more practitioners whose bodies emitted powerful energy undulations flew into the arena. The gradual convergence of aura caused an increase in the temperature of the arena. In the air, Liu Tong's eyebrows suddenly frowned as he stared at the glowing scroll, before he announced, Great Yang Empire. Lin Langqian. Whoa! As these words left his mouth, an uproar broke out. Astonishment flashed across many faces. To think that another person from the Great Yang Empire had made it into the Nirvana Golden ranking? A mere low-rank empire, yet 4 individuals had made it into the Nirvana Golden ranking. Even the super empires did not obtain such result. What did the Great Yang Empire do to enjoy such good fortune? Amidst the uproar and commotion, Lin Dong's eyebrows gradually knitted together. He raised his gaze and saw a handsome green-robed man walk into the arena. That familiar face belonged to Lin Langqian. As Lin Dong stared at Lin Langqian, the latter unblinkingly stared back. On his handsome face, An extremely sinister smile appeared. They were from the same clan, and yet, they were not considered brothers. Instead, they were sworn enemies. Both of them knew there was no way that their differences could be resolved. Lin Dong clearly knew about Lin Langtian's nature. If the latter were to enter a super sect, he would pose a great threat to Lin Dong's family in the Great Yang Empire. Thus, for the sake of his family and getting rid of any problems in the future, Lin Dong would absolutely not allow this thorn to exist. Therefore, Lin Langtian must die? Lin Dong's fist slowly clenched itself, while a terrifying killer intent burst out of his slightly narrowed eyes. There was absolutely no way that he would let Lin Langtian successfully enter a super sect. This video will end here.